the takeover by Doge of the Social Security Administration's and your and my most confidential and secret and private information about our finances and medical records. That can't be at the bottom of the birdcage. That can't be yesterday's news. The fact that the Supreme Court has allowed it for now to happen, the hijacking of your and my most private data, probably data I would not have provided to the Social Security Administration if I knew that Trump, some tech bros, and Elon Musk was going to be able to see them and be put into some one big giant grand database, some unifying database that will be subject to cyber attack by our enemies. You know, we can't stop talking about it. Representative Ritchie Torres, Democrat of New York, joined me just the other day for a briefing on this very issue. And here's the clip. Let's move now to something that's important to you and to America overall, which was the Supreme Court ruling about Doge, empowering it related to Social Security. And then I also want to talk about what Donald Trump has done to undermine the security of New York as payback, because he has this weird, strange, dysfunctional relationship of his own making with his home state.
Absolutely. On the Supreme, I mean, look, the Supreme Court recently decided that Doge could have access to Social Security, which contains some of the most private information that Americans have. And, you know, there's a law known as the Privacy Act that ensures that the federal government must protect the privacy of every American. And the Supreme Court is essentially gutting the privacy of the American people. You know, there's an agency in the Treasury Department known as the Bureau of Fiscal Service. It is the central payment system of the federal government. Think of it as the federal government's bank account or checkbook. And just like a president should not give access to our nuclear codes to just anyone, a president should not give access to our bank account to just anyone. The Supreme Court is essentially saying the president can do whatever he wants. It's the latest example of the court codifying the unitary executive theory, right? If Donald Trump wants to give all your private information, your bank accounts, your medical information, your financial information to Doge, he's free to do so. And this to me is one of the gravest violations of privacy that we've seen in America. And instead of protecting privacy, the Supreme Court is enabling Donald Trump's assault on the data security and data privacy of more than 300 million Americans.
Yeah, and now it's come out that Musk based his attacks on Social Security on a series of lies, things that were not true about what was happening. Look, is there, in a $5 trillion payment platform, is there fraud and waste? Absolutely. That's what inspector generals are for, which Donald Trump, first day on the job, got rid of all of them. But that, people like, getting their mother-in-law's Social Security check after she's passed or something like that. Yeah, but there's ways to root out, the less than 1% of fraud without compromising all of our privacy rights about, like you said, the most sensitive of our financial and medical information, and turning it over to a bunch of 20-year-old tech bros and others so they can and his goal, which I know he's gone, but it's still the goal of one unified major database of information about American people subject to cyber attack and cyber hacking by our adversaries, no doubt. That. So how is how
Can
are
I
you?
add that
Yes, of course.
Because I think people should know fraud in Social Security is almost non-existent. It's like it's dramatically less than 1%.
Okay.
And the Trump administration has repeatedly lied about Social Security, right? J.D. Vance at one point said 30% of the calls to the Social Security Administration are fraudulent. That is a blatant lie. Yeah. Donald Trump said at the State of the Union that a 360-year-old received Social Security payments. The Social Security Administration has not been in existence
so it's like
for 360 years. The United States has not been in existence for 360 years. It's a blatant lie, and the Social Security Administration automatically suspends payments for anyone who turns 115 years or older.
Yeah.
So the fraud is almost non-existent. The only fraud in the federal government is Donald Trump himself.
Perfectly put. And it's the same though. He creates the phony fraud argument or the phony rebellion argument or the phony insurrection argument in order to aggrandize his power. The fraud in voting is 0.002%. And yet it's not voter fraud programs, it's voter suppression programs. But in order to do it, you have to wave around and you have to use the false flag of fraud in order to destroy the very essence of what it means to be an American voter or Social Security. What can the Democrats in the minority in Congress do about the DOJ decision, the Social Security decision?
Look, we need to win back the House so that we can investigate what exactly DOJ has done with our data. I mean, DOJ had access to the medical information, the financial information, the bank account numbers, the Social Security numbers of hundreds of millions of Americans. And there's been no clear accounting of how that information was used. And so there needs to be an investigation into DOJ and into Elon Musk and his abuse of our private information.
It's hard for a party to be out of power for a period of time. Of course, it's happened quite frequently. So each party has gotten quite good at being the opposition or the resistance. Why don't you I think it's interesting to open the window a little bit for our audience. Why don't you tell our audience, what is the day-to-day life of a representative, a congressperson, in the role of opposition and resistance when you're in the minority and you don't control the leadership of the committees, and you can hold shadow hearings, but your powers are slightly limited. Your wings are slightly clipped, but you have a job to do, and you represent your district well in the nation. Tell me what it is that you do now in opposition when you can't make policy.
Look, we have to be part of the resistance. We have to advocate. Donald Trump is flooding the zones with illegal actions, and the burden falls on members of Congress to keep track of everything the Trump administration is doing, to keep the people informed. Because as you said, we're so accustomed to scandal and controversy and manufactured outrage from the Trump administration that you can become desensitized. And there are important stories that can be easily overlooked. And it's our job to ensure that we're exposing every possible abuse on the part of the Trump administration. And we're highlighting it through protest. We're highlighting it through advocacy. We're highlighting it through shadow hearings, which have been effective.
Mm-hmm, yes.
One of the most effective examples of resistance was Cory Booker's 24-hour-long speech filibuster. In the age of alternative media, we have to be creative in how we hold Trump accountable.
Absolutely. And you're confident in the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries and unifying your group and all the leaders like you?
I have full confidence in Hakeem. And look, the Democratic Party is a wide-ranging coalition, right? From the Squad to the Blue Dogs. But there's nothing that unites us more than resistance to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Right? Donald Trump is the most unifying force for the Democratic Party.
In a way, he's brought the country together, just not as he expected it.
He certainly has brought Democrats together.
Yeah, which was good because we certainly needed it coming off the election. Welcome back. I love Democratic leaders like Representative Ritchie Torres from the 15th District in New York. And it's important that he brief our audience on a regular basis. He loves coming on here because he knows our audience is engaged. We're asking the right questions. We want to be briefed on these issues. We want to demystify the intersection of law and politics. And Representative Torres is helping us do it. So until my next report, you're already here, by the way. If you like this kind of content, boom, hit that free subscribe button. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.